Facebook webinar. Welcome to everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. A little bit of return to rain this week, so welcome. Who thought we would have said that after so many months of wet conditions? And today I'm going to welcome certainly one guest. We've got a few IT issues with another one, but it's a pleasure in welcoming Glen Kirby, who's the technical manager for Syngenta UK and Ireland, also a webinar legend of recent weeks as well, so shaking his head. I was put up to that one. So welcome, Glen.
Thank you, Paul. Good to see you.
Our next topics for the next 45 minutes, hopefully we are going to be joined by Mark Ferguson as well, STRI, so we're just trying to resolve one or two IT issues on that. If not, it's just going to be the two of us for the next 45 minutes. But what I want to discuss today, a few topics, and a little bit of a theme from last week as well. What we're learning, what we're continuing to experience during this lockdown period of maintenance, week 6 now of lockdown, who would have thought that, and explore some of the seasonal quirks as well, which we're starting to see reported. Some are sort of come around every year. Normally we're battling sort of Augusta syndrome at this time of year. This year we seem to be sort of biblical plagues of leather jackets popping up out of the ground. And that's something that certainly our expert Glen here will talk about as well. It's been widely reported. We've seen a lot of it. Also opportunities for seeding. We're in this strange situation. We're talking about it the other week of low levels of maintenance, reduced levels of maintenance, no play. Maybe there's light at the end of the tunnel with some form of social golf coming back. We're not sure on that yet, but you know, is there an opportunity to make progress if we can with seeding this year, and talk around that. So all this and the listeners' questions, viewers' questions, keep those coming in. Welcome to everybody joining. So Glen, I'm going to hand over to you. I'm going to sort of pose a question in terms of, I listened to the webinar you did the other day on growing degree days. I was going to ask Mark Ferguson what the weather is like at Bingley, but you might have some information on that at the moment.
Yeah, we're in the process of launching a growth degree day tracker at Syngenta on our website. So it's something I'm debugging at the moment and just working through it. So I'm paying a bit of attention to growth degree days across the country and having a look at what goes on. And I'm pleased to announce that you've managed to locate the STRI at probably the slowest growth area of the country. And it kind of feels like that whenever I'm stood up there on the side of that hill. Yeah, it's pretty slow up there. If you start looking around, if you move towards the coasts and south, southeast, southwest, you see significantly more growth than you're probably seeing up there at the moment, which is interesting when you're trying to put a spring trial in, because I think spring lasts twice as long there as it does anywhere else.
Yeah, I'm not seeing much moving. Annual meadowgrass is just sat there, just not wanting to do anything at the moment. Maybe that's a good thing with maintenance being so low. It's been cold. It's been dry. The cold nighttime temperatures, Glen, that plays quite a big part in GDD. Yeah,
GDD is based on your high temperature and your low temperature, and it's a very basic model for trying to time things and kind of work out growth. It's got its limitations, but there's so many more factors to just the low temperature and the maximum temperature, which GDD is predicting. If you start looking at it for how long during the periods of the day are they there, what's that soil temperature doing? And I think we go through these Aprils, these kind of dry, desiccating Aprils we see now, and put a lot of these things down to the temperature. But I think how dry it is has as large an impact as well on that. It's not unusual now to see these dry, cold Aprils, and I don't think you can separate temperature out from moisture. It's all connected, and it's been a brutal April on the back of a brutal winter. It's been a really tough period for everybody, guys, out there.
Yeah, the moisture content. I'd be interested if we get any body wishing to sort of send some data in what they've been seeing. I'm sure everybody's been relying on irrigation, which is probably not ideal at this time of year. But you know, I saw the other day moisture in a bowling green down to 3%, localized dry patch set in already.
Yeah.
And you know, then you sort of people, lots of social media activity today with the return of rainfall, getting out there, trying to get the wetting agent on, trying to get it right down into the soil. Yeah, too much rain or not enough of it. It's the same problem.
I think going through these springs, those low moisture contents can sneak up on you quite quickly. I've seen it numerous times in my career as a greenkeeper and course manager, that kind of sudden panic because everything looked like it was drying out on you, when in reality we were just moving into a period where there was some stress implanted on the plant at last, and it had just gone through the previous few weeks at really low moisture temperatures, but there wasn't enough stress to kind of highlight it. So it can really sneak up on you through this period, and then all of a sudden you hit that warm couple of days, that long period of light, those longer day lengths, and all of a sudden the stress, it becomes much more visible.
Yeah. It's quite often here people say, you know, I don't want to put the irrigation on it. The water's cold. The water in the tank or out the ground is just cold. We're never going to replicate sort of uniform acidic rainfall, but I guess there's probably a danger point between sort of resisting using that irrigation. Yeah, because is it cold? Is that going to do any damage? But probably more damage done by just letting everything go to wilting point, or letting the localized dry spot come in.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing a bit of work with some soil moisture probes that are buried in the soil, and they're updating every 15 minutes and sending that information out. And they'll measure moisture, which is primarily why I put them in, to get my head around the impact of wetting agents. But it's also logging temperature as well. And one of the things that I found really interesting is how much the temperature does fluctuate through the day. And throughout my career, I've kind of always assumed and been taught that soil temperatures are much more stable than air temperature. And you could put your probe in at 12 o'clock and that would be fairly representative of the day's soil temperature. But actually, I'm finding, particularly in sandy surfaces, in that top 3-4 inches where most of your roots are going to be, that soil temperature mimics the air temperature almost identically. There's very little difference between your minimum air temperature and your soil temperature. Tiny little bit of lag. So I think this kind of idea of cooling soil temperatures down, now we've got the technology to actually monitor those soil temperatures, I'm seeing it's probably not quite as factual as maybe I believed running into that.
Okay, it's interesting. I mean, how is this playing a part in the trials that you're running up at STRI, the essential maintenance trials? What are you talk us through that, I suppose, a little bit, Glenn? I mean, what are you trying to achieve? How this trial's been designed?
Well, we've worked really hard to try and put a trial into the ground at quite short notice that is going to replicate some of what's going on out in the field at the moment. We recognise there are some real challenges that people are facing in the field now, and it's a different period. So traditionally we'd be using something like our growth regulator Primo Max as a plant benefit, as something that was going to help us manage that sward much better, to come up with a better putting surface. Whereas we've kind of changed over the last 5 weeks to looking at Primo as purely a growth regulator. How can we use it to reduce our cutting input? How can we use it to reduce the amount of maintenance we're going to put into these greens and free up some time, but still allow us to flip that switch and turn them back into high quality putting surfaces when we come out of this? So we tried to put a trial in the ground to kind of test the limits of that and feed that information back to the industry almost in real time. So as we do some assessments, we're trying to get that information out to people almost instantly to try and help them in their decision-making process on how to use the product. So we've got a number of Primo applications in the ground. We've got some that we're applying on 7-day windows. We've got some that we're applying on 50 growth degree day windows. And we've got some that we're applying on 100 growth degree day windows. And we will adjust it as we go through it to try and tweak and guide people the best way possible to come through this. It's a really interesting trial. We're only 10 days into it, and we're just about to put the first set of data out. In fact, Mark's probably busy on his computer writing that up for me rather than joining us on this call. So, now. Yeah. It's been really interesting so far. The thing that's come out of it so far, and I think we're only on day 10, we have 3 sets of cutting strategies in place. So we've done the same trial over 3 plots, and on one of the plots we're cutting it 5 times a week to try and replicate what would be normal for that kind of area and a normal time golf course. On one of the plots we're cutting 3 times a week, and on one of the plots we're cutting once a week. And the thing that I'm finding fascinating that's come up instantly is the plant health, the condition of the turf, is far stronger in the plot that we're only cutting once a week. It's a far healthier plant than in the other 2.
Okay.
And that you forget sometimes that often the way to create a healthier plant is to do less to it. And a lot of the tools we use and a lot of the things we do, we're not actually trying to create a healthy plant. We're trying to create a putting surface. And a lot of the products we bring to market are there and can be used to improve plant health. But as an industry, what we've done, and I did this as well, we've used these opportunities to improve plant health so that we can push how far we push them, so we get a better putting surface on the back of it. Because generally, course managers don't like a healthy sward. They like a sward that's got a little bit of stress imparted on it, so that it's just that little bit better than it would be if it was healthy. If all we were looking to do was develop healthy turf, we would manage it very differently to how we're trying to manage a high quality putting surface. And it's just reminded me of something that's quite obvious and basic, but I think we're all guilty of forgetting about sometimes.
So yeah, so if we've got the potential of play coming back in, whether it's through May, obviously when it's safe, what shape or form that's going to be. The reality beats, with my golfer's hat on now, Glenn, and you and I have both been at the other end of this as a managing golf course. With my golfer's hat on, can we see it coming? Well, they look great, but boy, they don't play well. I see this in bowls. I'm going to use the bowls now. Go back into bowls again here. Coming out of winter, you go into the season. The green is slow. Heavy is the term in bowls. It just doesn't play well. Why is that? Because it hasn't had feet across it from time. It hasn't had that regular maintenance. They look great because we haven't had sort of winter wear. A bit mossy because we haven't had winter wear as well. That's, as soon as you take traffic away, moss can be a real problem. But are we in the same situation we could be with greens looking healthy, as you say, but we're not on that sort of performance edge that we've been normally looking at?
No, I think you're right. I think there's definitely potential for the moment we flick that switch and get golfers back out there. There's definitely potential for those surfaces to look healthy and be healthy, and potentially deeper rooting and better sward density, etc., etc. But that doesn't necessarily mean playing well. There is a real difference between the two things. Now, I think the question for me isn't, are they healthier or aren't they healthier? It's what can we do and how quickly can we turn them back on? And that's going to come down to resources for each club, the number of staff they've got, the machinery they've got available, and how quick they decide to flip, and the pressure they're under to get things back. If we move back into a social golf and a very laid back golf style, which we may well do, probably means we'll open earlier if we go that route, then it may give us this opportunity to kind of refresh things and refresh the standards that golfers are expecting. But if we do move back into this kind of competitive golf immediately, then we may see something different. I don't know how we're going to come out of this, but
when did we ever lose social golf? Do you remember the days when it was sort of non-qualifying competitions, and yet all of a sudden, I think the handicap system changed. We're going back years now, but handicap system changed, and it was sort of qualifying all of the time. There was never that sort of relaxed golf. It was sort of it became. That's when I think, you know, so it just performance all of the time, expectation. So we got a question here from Richard. Hi Richard. Hope you're well up there. Wise words. I think he must be talking to you there, Glenn. We do forget that we're trying to achieve, but trying to create a surface. We will all use this awful situation to see how we can manage things slightly differently and not lose the standard. Adapt to overcome. I think that's quite right. That, you know, the whole media is talking about the new normal. Are things ever going to go back to how they are, how they were? You know, this year will be different, I see. So yeah, maybe this sort of 24/7 sort of competition golf, maybe we'll become a bit more relaxed from it. I don't know.
I think it would do the industry good, but I know there's a lot of golfers that only retain their memberships to play competitive golf. There's no one size fits all for this, is there, for golfers?
Yeah, and you know, we shouldn't be sort of, you know, golf centric on this as well. You know, other sports services are going to have exactly the same thing. You know, local authority sports pitches. I've seen somewhere they've gone through winter, you know, the wet winter conditions, awful. Undoubtedly, there's been periods of use when the surface was soft, and then coronavirus came in. No maintenance immediately, no play, no maintenance. It went dry. It's set like a corrugated piece of iron. The undulations in the pitch, you know, it's going to be, how do we get back from there? You know, dealing with that. So it's there's a lot of sort of maintenance schedules which haven't even sort of come into place yet. Certainly at the grassroots level. So it's going to be tough. Interested from any viewers wishing to send comments in on that, sort of pan sports. Got a message here from Glenn Stone. Hi Glenn. Is this also the gibberellic acid slowing down and the protein making plants stronger with Primo?
Yeah, so there are benefits to using Primo, of course. That's the purpose of putting that on. But when we put these trial plots together, so we'll have a number of different treatments in there, and we'll always have an untreated control in there too. So in these areas of 1 cut a week, 3 cut a week, 5 cuts a week, there'll also be untreated controls in there, so that we can look to see the comparison if we hadn't put these products in, and we're seeing those same plant health benefits in those. So even across the board, you can see a marked improvement on turf health by only cutting it once a week through this period. Now, as we go through it, that will change slightly. 1 cut a week, once we move into some serious proper growth, will probably be the one that starts to look a bit scalpier and a bit less healthy, and it will kind of move into that middle range. But just something that, you know, I've forgotten more times than I care to mention. Sometimes the best thing to do with turf is leave it alone, but that's not always what we're allowed to do. It's just something that you now have this unique opportunity to do that you probably didn't have before.
You gave us a sneak peek, Glenn, of, you know, what you've seen to date, maybe with the sort of the 1 cut per week looking healthy, but with that discussion over healthy compared to something that's going to sort of transition to performance. What's your gut instincts? What do you expect to see?
I think I'm going to see. That's the purpose of doing this trial, really. We've got some high rates of Primo going in there. We've kind of maxed out what we're allowed to do with the label. We know Primo as a product has done. The reason it's so popular in the market is because it does a job. The interesting thing is going to be, how quick can we flip that switch back to low maintenance or essential maintenance to high quality putting surfaces? And I don't think we'll really see that. We'll be able to look at it and kind of think, in this situation, I think this is going to come down, cutting height wise and regularity for cuts. This is going to come better. I suspect in this situation where we're going to go at 7 calendar days with the highest rate of primo we can, that is going to give us our best chance, because that is going to give us our absolute maximum amount of active ingredient going into the plant. That is going to give us our best comeback to putting surfaces. The interesting thing will be beyond that, though, is have we pushed it too far? So a month after we've stopped and we've got them back to normal heights, do we see a downside to really maxing things out in spring? So it's not just about what we're going to see short term, about kind of getting it through this period, getting it back to being a putting surface. It's through the rest of the season, do we see a negative effect to having gone that hard that early? If we don't, there's some real lessons from that going forward for the future. Is it a tool we could use to reduce labour and still keep high surfaces? If we do, which would have been better? Could we have pushed it out to the growth degree day model? Would that have given us something better? That for me is the really interesting bit, is how quick can we turn it back, and is there a downside to doing what we've done?
And we haven't got the ability to be 100% accurate in treating just the golf green, for instance. So, the shape of the golf green, with individual nodule control now moving towards technologies adapting all of the time. But for many, we're spraying off to that intersection between green collar and green. And there's again, good topic that I've seen sometimes is a sort of turf collar decline. And whether it's associated to, does the application of trinixopac on a collar in an area where you've got stress from, let's say, roller or mower turning, etc. At times, probably when there's other environmental pressures, hot conditions maybe. But with a slightly higher height of cut on that collar, is the primo likely to react differently between a green, let's say, cut at 3.25 millimeter compared to a collar, let's say, cut at 7 millimeter?
What we have seen in our trials is the longer the turf, the more impact the rate has on the product's longevity. So in a football pitch environment, in a stadium environment, you'll get more longevity out of higher rates than you would on lower heights of cut turf. So it's highly likely that in collars and areas of a high height of cut, we are kind of using more of a layering effect. So you're kind of building and building and building. And one of the purposes of using growth degree day models is to stretch out your windows so you get appropriate amount of overlap over products. Whereas the downside to going on a calendar is all the time the weather is cold, you're layering and layering and layering. So during this period, where it's quite cold spring at Bingley, not using growth degree days, using 7 days, we are massively layering up the product on top of each other. Now, in shorter turf, or longer turf, sorry, in the collar around it, you're not only going to be layering it, but you've got this improved impact of having longer turf too. So your rate is getting higher and higher and higher.
Yeah.
At the same time as you've got all the stresses that go on in your collars, which are triples that are turning, rollers that are changing direction, hand mowers that are spinning, all of those things impart an additional amount of stress on something that probably doesn't get the maintenance input that something only a few feet away from it does. So there's definitely value in all of that.
So would I be correct in say, to counteract that potential collar decline, then you could sort of a bespoke target application of additional nutrition into that collar area might help that situation? Again, I think it all boils down to we're probably only going to likely see it in sort of periods of high stress, environmental stress maybe, or so intensive sort of competition tournament management.
I think if we could. Yeah, I always toyed with getting a push spreader out, a drop spreader, and doing a controlled release on my collars just to try and move things forward. That's something I always thought about, but it was one of those things that I would have loved to have done. It was always on my list, and I never actually got round to, because there was more important things like emptying the bins or cleaning ball washers, wiping bird muck off the benches.
Hey, whoever thought of these things that would get in the way of the real interesting stuff?
They're the reality of doing it. So.
Okay.
The value was the best benefit was always being on my team about turning mowers properly and taking big wide turns. And I had a great team who really worked with me and got on me more than I did than them about those kind of things. But we had some really tight greens up against bunkers, and I saw that impact far more in these areas where you were very limited on what you could do and where you could turn, and you had some little awkward places for rollers where you would change a direction and you would get that little bit more wheel spin off the roller than you wanted to, and you would see this kind of accumulated effect of stress in those areas. And I think there's a real value in a team that take their time and do those things properly. I think sometimes we underestimate the damage that we're imparting on turf.
You see, I think I've seen an increase over years where, you know, maybe with increased use of sort of turf irons, you know, the on-off rolling turf iron, great to play their part, you know. But I think go back to some of the disturbance theory sort of review work that we did. I think it was more damaging on sort of the finer grass species, and perhaps we thought if over applied, or the stress of just going off. In an ideal world, would all be matting and stuff like that, but you know, it's.
And I think that comes back to what we were talking about earlier. You know, the less we do, the less stress we're implanting on it. But you look at what's now become part of normal maintenance. It's brushing, it's grooming, it's rolling, it's double cutting, it's freaky cutting. It's all of these things that we're putting in place to try and drive things forward, because we have all of these amazing products now that have allowed us to push the health of the plant a little bit further. And in turn, we've chosen to use that to get an extra half a foot of green speed out of it, rather than maintaining the same green speed and actually having a healthier plant on the back of it. Now, there is possibly an opportunity that we may start using some of these products to gain that health back and keep it for ourselves. Fingers crossed.
Okay. We've got some questions stacking up here, Glenn. So I'm just going to go back to one from Glenn here, keeping on the theme of the Syngenta trials here. When does the research become available? I'm guessing that's when Mark finishes on Netflix this afternoon instead of joining the webinar.
So yeah, Mark did a video for us Monday, and I'm pretty sure that's his plan every Monday, to put a video together on what he's seeing. So that, I believe, went out today and is on our Greencast website, and should have gone out on social media today. So the visual video of what he's seeing, that should go out every Monday. He's also gathering the data, I believe, on Monday, and it looks like he's processing that at the moment and sending it over to me, and I'm going to try and draw some turf manager conclusions from what he's doing and try and sit kind of the role that I have. Really, I'm not a scientist and I'm no longer a course manager. I kind of sit in the middle here and try and decode things. So hopefully I'll get some of that information this afternoon, and we'll ping that out to everybody, and it will be on my blog, and I think we're going to put it out on Greencast and the normal social media routine.
Okay,
so
great. That's great news. I've got a question here, for a couple of questions from Jonathan, who I believe is down south, and the good news is that the POA has woken up, and with the differential growth will now level up as the temperatures increase. Be careful not to be over aggressive with the seed heads, as we do not want them spreading them. I guess, Glenn, we're heading into this period where, you know, if we're too aggressive on the opening up the sward, we create these sort of pockets for gaps in the sward for POA to do its thing.
Yeah, we had that. We had a quick call earlier with Mark before he had his IT problems, and we were talking about seeding, weren't we? And is this a really good opportunity to get some seed in the ground with less traffic about? So therefore, would we have a better chance? And we're kind of talking about the positives and the negatives. And for me, overseeding is only really a strong benefit when you can make some really good seed to soil contact. And to do that, you've got to open up the sward. And at the moment with POA seeding, is that a benefit or a negative? And I'd be really interested to hear Mark's views on it. But I'm not sure it's a time where I'd be ripping into the sward and opening it up for seeding. But you know,
I guess you know, and who knows? You know, do we sort of, are we going to be in this period of social play issues or less wear on sports surfaces? So with that in mind, if we've got that less wear, that less stress on seedlings, and you know, maybe we can, for some sports pitches, we might be able to give them a little bit more water to encourage the seeding when, you know, you might be trying to balance that with play. We might have an opportunity here in a strange way to make get more success from seeding than maybe we have done in normal years.
Yeah, I think, and again, it's going to come down to the club and what the members are going to, or what golfers will tolerate, and the relationship you have in there, and how they stagger this opening, and the attitude that golfers come back with. And I hope golfers come back with the attitude of, this is social golf, we're only allowed out 2 at a time, it's not competitive, we can continue to do X, Y, and Z, and the surfaces don't have to be absolutely A1. But I've not met many golfers that have given that much away. Most of them seem to expect the world. And
yeah, quite timely, I suppose. Another comment here from Jonathan. We have an opportunity to change the way we manage courses after this. I think we're going to have to. Look, we're going to be under pressure resources wise, I guess, if nothing else. But Jonathan goes on to say, I've kept time and motion records to show how we can be more effective in saving costs as a team. Well, that sounds really interesting, Jonathan. And I know from sort of, you know, past life, I've sort of looked at time and motion, and there isn't a 5-minute job. It's I'll use a situation of pitch marks, for instance, where, you know, the age-old battle of repairing pitch marks, and this particular club had been charged with, well, the green staff are here anyway. The green staff could do it. We've got a welcome visitor. Hello. So we've got the green staff are here. They can do change the pitch mark, repair the pitch marks, but you know, if it's a couple of minutes per green, over 18 greens, 20 with the chipping green, you know, that adds up to time. And this particular club said, yeah, we can do that, and it's going to cost £6,000 a year. So the notice went back up to the members in terms of, can you repair your pitch marks, please? So there has got to be a change to the way we do things. The reality is that people might be under more pressure, staffing resources, budget resources. I guess, again, that's probably one of the things that you're looking at with your Syngenta trial, Glen, that, you know, how can we maximize our time through other areas of the golf course, which might still need to be maintained.
Yeah, and let's not forget that golf clubs are more than just a golf course. I know we like to think that the golf course is the most important thing, but they're going to be looking to do everything they can to bring members in and open those doors and get things going. So there's going to be a world of compromises once we open those gates as well, and we're going to have to remember that. And, you know, it's going to be important that clubs are offering good quality surfaces to retain the members that they've got and bring new ones in from the ones they've lost. That's what we're here to do, to put surfaces out for people to play on. But hopefully there is a resetting of how we think going through this process in all areas of life. And we'll see how we come out of it. But I think we've got to look at some of our products slightly differently and offer some advice to try and help people use them in this new world that we're going to enter into.
So whilst we're on the jolly message then of expectations, the return of play may well come at a time where we're seeing leather jackets popping out of the ground, popping out of pavements, I believe, Glen, amongst other areas, and all bugs and creatures seem to be appearing. Why? What's going on with that? What is it? Is it a seasonal quirk? Is it because we've got less traffic out there, or these things are just wanting to be up at the moment, or you know, what's your reports?
Yeah, well, I think you're referring to some tweets that I put out a couple of weeks back. It was bank holiday weekend, and all of a sudden I got a whole host of messages from around the country of people seeing leather jackets on their greens in conditions they wouldn't normally expect to see it. So we've done a bit of inquiring, and it seems that there's been a bit of a phenomenon this spring of high levels of leather jackets just crawling around at times when we wouldn't expect it. And it's not just in turf as well. I've had a chat with a few entomologists that we work with, and They've seen it in other areas. One of the guys that we do some work with works in kind of the garden market quite a lot, and he was saying he's had a lot of people asking why they're seeing caterpillars climbing out from underneath their patios. So they've seen them in their gardens actually climbing through the pointing in between their patio cracks. So it's not just turf. I suspect we're seeing a little bit. There's my phone. I suspect we're seeing the true impact of having no massive amounts of chemical control anywhere in the industry, whether that be agriculture, turf, wherever. So population levels are increasing. I think we're continuing to see these really mild winters, and mild winters lead to a longer period of growth for them and maybe a change in their life cycle. And I just think we're starting to see the true picture of leather jacket challenges and damage without an awful lot of control products on the market available to us.
Yeah, I've seen reports of people, that coming out of winter, you got a stressed area and a bit of water, a bit of feed, and nothing's happening, and suddenly you just start to have a look in the profile, and there's loads of leather jackets, and even where sheets have been placed over to just try and give an indication. And mentioned last week can be a bit hit and miss, but all of a sudden these things seem to be coming out of the ground with sheeting. So something to try maybe, but whether that's the sort of the whole population or just a percentage of them, don't know.
It's really difficult. I've been around to look at a lot of sites this winter and try and establish control levels. We've got quite a lot of trials in the ground out there, and even something as simple as a trial, where you would think, even with the expertise we have in the industry, doing population counts even in a trial environment is incredibly difficult. They can bury to really deep in the ground. They can move much quicker than you would expect through the soil profile. If you've got a verti-drain line there, the speed they can move up and down those to lower profiles is frightening, how quick they can move.
Oh, yeah.
It's just that they're hiding away. And it's really difficult to gauge exactly what your population levels are. And it's not until you kind of reach this late instar stage of their life cycle when they really start surface feeding, and you start to see the levels of damage they can create. Now, what we've been able to do historically as an industry is just kind of wipe the slate clean every spring. We'll go out there with our chlorpyrifos, our cheap agricultural products, we'll wipe the slate clean, and then we'll start again. Whereas now we're really in this process of learning the life cycles of these things, understanding how many hatches a year, what different species there are in the ground, how far do they migrate. So even if you've got a product that control it within that surface for a certain period of time, what's stopping things migrating in after that period of control to just reinfest that area? There are so many things we've got to learn about these if we're going to control them with what is an environmentally responsible product. To get products registered now, we have to work really hard in proving just how safe they are to the environment, and trying to target a leather jacket without damaging a worm is an incredible piece of technology. And that's the kind of thing we have to prove that we're doing now. But to expect that also to wipe out a whole population in just one hit is a very different story. So we've got a lot to learn. It's a long journey, this one, and there's going to be some pretty sad stories along the way, I'm afraid. But we are moving in the right direction, I think. Yeah,
and the lines lit up as soon as we started talking leather jackets. So questions sort of come flying in, and people were sort of reporting. Jonathan says he'd seen first attack in 13 years, never seen leather jackets on the greens before, hadn't picked them off today. So yeah, again, we're just seeing these things pop up. Dave Mycock there, we had 100 leather jackets on the surface of each green today. Sometimes seeing these sort of regional sort of, or sections of a golf course, but all over the place, in parks as well, we're seeing there as well. Message here from Carl Williams. Hi, Carl. Hope you're keeping well. Talking about leather jackets, Carl posted a great photograph of one on Twitter the other day. I think he glued it to an aeration hole there, Carl, but it was a great photograph. But it says, I'm afraid in my opinion, course managers, ground staff will continue to adapt as they do on a daily, weekly basis, but golfers will expect prestigious golf courses upon return.
That. I'm a member of a golf club, and I'm getting emails regularly to tell me how amazing the golf course is going to be when I return. And I try desperately not to engage or even think about it. But from a general manager's perspective or the club's perspective, I'm a paying member, and they're going to desperately don't want to lose my income. So I can understand why they're going to create that message for the customer. It's tricky.
Message from one of our regular viewers here, Eric, continuing on with a chemical question. Are there any indications how regulations may change with our departure from the EU? It's all gone quiet on that, hasn't it? What happened in the news to take us away from Brexit discussion? Or will the UK adapt to what we have had?
Hi, Eric. It's an interesting one. Short term and immediate, it will be a simple copy and paste from all of the regulations in the EU over to the UK. Where things go longer term, we don't know. It would, I suspect, give us the opportunity to slowly move in a different direction. What direction that is, who knows? Traditionally, UK has been tighter and far more driven on the environmental things than we give them credit for. And even if there is a massive swing in a different direction, it still has to work for businesses to create a product across a European region. So I don't suspect you'll see any significant changes quickly, but maybe in a decade or 20 years time, we may have moved in a slightly different direction. But in the short to mid-term, it will be a copy and paste exercise from any EU regs.
I guess the sort of take-home message, Glenn, is I don't think it's going to become any easier, is it? Whether we're sort of out of the EU or whatever happens. Message here from Pete Nicholson on managed bowling greens, and I've heard mixed messages how to apply Primo Max. I've been told to add nitrogen with it.
You'll get mixed messages because I guess there are 100 different ways of using Primo. It's a really versatile product. And like I said earlier, it's primarily a growth regulator, and that was why it was brought to the market. But we've used that product over the last probably 20 years now in varying ways. Now, what you'd probably do in a normal season is you would use Primo to dense down that plant, to tighten up the plant at the same time as you're putting nitrogen in there, because you would really want to kind of create this sward density at higher rates. And in some grass species, you sometimes see a little bit of yellowing with Primo if you don't use any nitrogen in there, which in a traditional environment, when you've got customers, is probably not what you want. So you can negate that with using nitrogen. However, it has no impact on how the product is taken into the plant. So in the situation at STRI at the moment, in this lockdown trial, we've used Primo without nitrogen and we've seen no negative effects. But traditionally, to couple that up with your nitrogen input to negate that yellowing and improve that sward density, yes, it's good sound advice, but there's no need to do it.
Okay, I suppose that sort of partly answers Craig Berry's message here regarding the STRI trial plots. Has there been any fertility applied with the Primo? If so, what fertility and rate? I'm guessing you're looking at a range of things.
Yeah, so we started it with there's a base program over the whole thing, and the base program is CMAX, ICR CMAX product, and Quilibra in there as a wetting agent, and that was all watered in. So that's there as the base program. We are now looking at how we go about putting our first fertility program in on top of it. We made the decision to start it on really low nutrition, and then the intention is to adjust the nitrogen program as we go through. We've already stumbled across a problem with that theory, because what we're now seeing is where we have 1 cut a week going on and we have 5 cuts a week going on, we're already moving into 2 very different fertilizer demand situations. So given if you had any one of those situations, you would start managing them slightly different. The one that's getting less maintenance is requiring less fertility than the one that's getting cut 5 times a week. So what we've got to come up with, and I think we've got a call booked in, it might even be what Mark's doing now. We've got to have a look at a program that's going to fit somewhere in the middle and do something for all of those trial plots. We've got all these different primo rates going on. We've got these untreated control. We've got varying amounts of cuts. And actually, we would probably pick out a slightly different fertilizer program for all of them. But we've got to find something that sits in the middle so that it's an even coverage over the lot. Otherwise, you end up creating this other set of trials where you have varying fertility going on, and all of a sudden this trial becomes massive and too big for us to monitor.
Okay, I'm going to take one more question here because we're out of time, but we'll continue. We'll go into extra time just for a few more minutes. Question from Martin here. Hi, Martin. If we are seeing early season leather jacket activity, what are the acceptable threshold populations per meter squared? And will the autumn hatch window still continue to be the best chance of managing the population? That's a great question.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Threshold levels. I've heard figures mentioned, and I probably have used exactly those same figures in some of my presentations that you've heard. I think the figures that I've used are somewhere between kind of, once you hit 30 a square meter up to 100, that's your kind of danger range. But honestly, from my experience going out there and trying to measure these things, I don't know how you would pick out 30 a square meter or 100 square meter, because they go down to such depth, they move so quick. Trying to establish how many you've got in the surface is really, really tricky, because you can measure them one day and then go back to the same area the next day and they'll have moved to a different area of the profile. So I think establishing these thresholds is becoming increasingly more difficult. As far as managing them goes, we are, as many of you are aware, in the process again of applying for another emergency authorization for our insecticide, Acela. Regulations are only going to permit us to have one application of that per year, whatever the situation. So you've then got to start looking at when is the best time to get the very best out of it. As we move into these climates that are kind of more consistent, staying much more mild through the winter. We saw last year using Pest Tracker, which thank you for everyone for engaging, but we saw last year all the way from April through to the end of October, we had crane fly laying. So trying to pick one ideal window to get the best results is going to be really tricky, and why it's so important we learn more about the life cycle of these pests. For me, it's still that biggest hatch is going to be the autumn, that kind of end of August, September, maybe even October period. That's going to give us our best chance to control anything, or the largest percentage. So at the moment, that's still where I'm looking as our best chance of maximum success.
Okay. Right. Look, I think we're going to sort of wrap up from here. We could talk about various subjects and this, but we haven't got Coldplay to sing us out at the end of this production. But on behalf of STRI, thank everybody for joining. Glen, I think on behalf of Syngenta, you got a sign out message?
Yeah, just thank you for everyone taking time to listen to us. We're here to support. If you want some help, if there's anything we can do, get in touch. I try to put loads of stuff out on my blog. The trial, we're doing the trial to try and help you guys out. And even if it's just giving you some data to support you when golfers go back. Myself and Dan have both been course managers, and I think we've got a bit of an idea of what you're going through at the moment. We're here to help. If you want us, give us a shout.
But in the absence of Coldplay, I'm going to use this as a quote that Jonathan Budd had messaged in, and this is a great way to sign out. And I'm not going to say anything after this because it's such a positive message. This is a great time to be involved in turf management. We're at the forefront of great change. Just like the virus, amazing things happen when people need to find the answers. See you next week.
Very good.